Jo Caseley is a singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist from the Southern Highlands of New South Wales. She has recently released her third album, High on Heartstrings, and it's been a big year because she also attended the Academy of Country Music earlier this year. Lots of music this year. Hello, Jo.
Hey, Sophie, thank you so much for having me on your show, which I love.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you on the show and to talk about this album. Now, the title of the album and the first track is High on Heartstrings. I'd say in general, the album is high on heart, if that makes sense, because heartstrings sounds like, tugging on the heartstrings, and it does that. But there's a lot of emotion in it, and I actually have found it really moving, the whole album, because there's a real sense of you bringing your whole self to it. Does it feel like that when you're making the songs, or are you so in it that it's just a question of, I want to get these songs out?
The first thing you said is exactly what it was. It did feel like that when I was writing the songs. So High on Heartstrings is all about listening to your heart and following your dreams. And I think a lot of the time as women, creative women, as I am, it can be a really hard road because, I'm married, I have a husband, we have a business that we run together, we have children who need, my undivided attention. That's why I had children, was to go in wholehearted as a mother and be present in motherhood. So you put all those things together and what time's left, for your passion and, and for your creativeness, which if you don't do it, you die inside as a true creative. And my life was just on that hamster wheel of go, 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 from one thing to the next, from one thing to the next. And I all of a sudden when the kids were little, I had time on my hands when they were little. And I used to do a lot of shows in my little village of Penrose where I lived then. And I would invite artists to come along. And some of the artists that came and played at my shows were people like Lachlan Bryan, Harry Hookey, Alan Caswell, Bill Chambers. That was my creative, being able to do shows and connect with people when I was just so isolated within business, motherhood, raising kids. But I didn't have time to get on the road, but I had time to hold these concerts in my home village. When the kids got older, I didn't even have time for that. I didn't even have time for prepping a show, marketing, getting people there. I was so underwater with running this mechanics business that we have that became huge, that it needed, 5 days a week, 7 days a week. We just work. We're really hard workers. The trucks start coming in the driveway here at 6 a.m. every day.
Wow. Okay.
And they're here at my home. So out here I have trucks and concrete trucks and diggers and loaders and earth moving equipment. And it is a huge hellhole of a yard out there with stuff that needs fixing. So I was dying inside, not being able to create. And I felt like I was losing time because I wasn't being able to keep my profile up, release music, tour, be all of the things that I wanted to be as a creative, but just didn't fit into my lifestyle as a mother at the time of those years. So when I did get time to write a song, I went, well, shit, if I'm going to write a song, it's going to be a good song, and people are going to be able to connect with this. I have to tell people what I'm feeling and how this is. Otherwise, they'll never know. They'll never know what it's like to be a mother in business with your husband, struggling to make ends meet, feeling like, you've only got a tiny little straw over the water that you're breathing just to stay alive. That's what my life. That's what my life has been like, Sophie.
Right.
That's what my life has been like. Crazy. Would I trade any of it? Hell no. Would I ever give up? Hell no. It's shaped me into the person I am. You know, all those lessons that I've learned. And my husband isn't a creative.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been tough too, you know. But I wouldn't have any of those songs on that album had that not been my story.
Yeah. And there is a song called Hard Way to Make a Living on the album, which I think acknowledges part of what you've just talked about. And also what you've just said points to the fact that having creative practice, creative output, it's not just the practice of it, but actually releasing something that can connect to an audience is as essential as breathing in many ways for you, and I'm sure for a lot of other artists. But the commitment to stay committed to it can be really challenging. And I think that is the practice of it. It's like every day rededicating yourself to this creative path.
Correct. And in the lifestyle that I've been living, which has been kids first, business first, so there's money on the table to pay the school fees, my music's had to take a bit of a back seat. But, you know, that will change as the kids get older and as life gets easier, you know, and as we mature and we're not struggling so much as we were in our earlier years of marriage. And, you know, I'm really grateful. Everything has a process. And I think in life, you just have to trust the process. I would have loved to have lived my whole complete life as a creative and as a musician and touring and doing music for a living, but I wouldn't have a family like I do now, because without support, and which I don't have any, as in, you know, parents who are willing to take the kids on the weekend when you go off, or parents who will help you when, you know, you're up on stage, and that just didn't exist in my life. So music had to take a back seat, and it almost killed me as a creative.
Right.
But you find the little pockets, you know, and you make them worth it. So when you do get to write songs and when you do get to release songs, you better make damn straight that those songs are worth listening to.
Yeah.
You know,
and they very much are.
You're not going to release album fillers.
Yeah. That's right, because it's not, you don't want to waste your time as an artist on songs that you're not proud of.
We're not here to spiders, Sophie. You know?
Yeah.
We're being real. We're telling our truth. We're being authentic. We are doing this. And that's what this album was about.
Yeah. I think that really does come across. And I'm also interested, I just noted the phrase you said, trust the process, because I'm quite a believer in the idea of surrendering to things, because otherwise, you know, it's a bit scary to do that, but you can expend and actually waste a lot of energy fighting something or fighting a reality. Like you could have thought, okay, well, I'm just going to try to push back against everything. I'm really going to try to make the time to do this, that, and the other, instead of, as you said, trusting the process, which then, in a sense, frees up that creative energy, so that when you have the time, it's this sense of flow rather than a jagged line, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't fight it. And I see a lot of, you know, younger people fighting it and pushing themselves. You know, I have to do this and I have to do that. And, you know, you can see they're pushing themselves and you can see it plays with their mental health. You actually don't have to do any of that. And in fact, like, I'm a really strong believer, because Casey Chambers has been one of my greatest role models. And she's definitely of the belief that you don't have to do anything. Yeah. There's no real rules. You know, you really need to just find what works for you. That's the right thing. And listen to your intuition and listen to your heart and what's right for you and your family, and make it work like that. And I think pushing against the grain and trying to make something happen when it's just not time, you know, is only going to end in disaster, which basically, like the album that I did before this, Albany, if any of your listeners go back and listen to that, I mean, I think that is also some of my best work and my best writing on Albany. It's a beautiful album. Sophie. I absolutely love it, which is a lot for me to say about my music because I am my greatest critic. And, you know, I spent years cringing listening to my music thinking, oh, I would never be able to share that. But it's a beautiful album. But when I came to release it, it was really the wrong time, you know, and I was so busy, again, business. I think we're in the middle of moving house and moving business and moving this and doing that. And I was like, I'm going to do my music because I'm a musician and I should have to do, I'm doing it, God damn it. And releasing that album, I got through the launch, which was a beautiful launch locally in Bundanoon. I think we had about 200 ticket sales. I had a beautiful band, absolutely loved it. But I'd been getting more and more anxious about ticket sales and people coming. And then I think after that, I had Tamworth and I had some beautiful shows booked at Tamworth. I was playing at the DAG and, you know, these lovely places I'd always wanted to play. By the time Tamworth came, I had complete laryngitis. I was completely run down. I was having a little nervous breakdown, not being able to get out of bed, going, I just can't do it. Because I was asking just way too much of myself at the time. The time, you know, my kids were young. They really needed me. They wanted to be driven to parties and they wanted, you know, their needs had to come first. I just had to take a bit of a back seat, which I did. And, you know, and I think as I get older, the greatest thing I realize is music's always going to be there, Sophie. You know, even when I've got grey hair and I'm 80 years old, I'm still going to be going to country music festivals and folk festivals and playing. I don't care how old I am, and I don't think people care either. If you've got good songs and they're worth listening to, people are going to listen.
I think that is part of what's great about the genre is that, the audience doesn't care. They really, I've been in Tamworth so many times and seen so many shows and it's not like anyone gets up and leaves if the artist changes at the venue and they're like, oh, I'm not going to listen to 18-year-old or 80-year-old. Yes, you're right. It can be any age and it can be any range of experiences because what the audience wants is authenticity and stories.
And particularly country music people. Country music fans want to know your story and they can smell bullshit a mile away. And they can see through people who are trying to be something that they're not. So the only thing left is to surrender and to tell your story. That's what people want and that's what people need and that's what shapes, you know, our future, our culture, our identity is that, you know, we are recording the lives of people in this day and age that, you know, in 20, 30, 100 years, they'll listen back to our songs and go, wow, you know, look what it was like back then. These are important stories to be told.
Absolutely. You know, as I said, part of that surrendering process can be really scary because it does feel like jumping without a net. What I tend to find as an observer, at least, is when artists are prepared to be vulnerable, as you have been on this album and your earlier work, the audience does tend to catch you because they recognize that you're being vulnerable in order to connect with them and offer them something. But I'm wondering for you as an artist, if you do, like when you're writing these songs, for example, that are so full of emotion, that are really moving, whether there's almost like an intellectual impulse to check yourself because you think, oh no, maybe the song should be a different way, or whether you are now at a stage 3 albums in where you do just trust that process completely when you're writing as well as recording.
No, I had a lot of help, Sophie, to get to the point where I could surrender myself and be vulnerable. Naturally, I was very guarded. Naturally, I've been doing quite a deep spiritual healing probably for the last, probably since I turned 40, say, and I'm 46 now. So I think these last few years, the person I was 6 years ago at the end of my last album was pretty much a mess.
Right.
I had no self-confidence whatsoever. I'd sing because the stage is always my sanctuary and I've always loved singing. And I'd just do it because I loved it. But I never thought that other people liked my music. I never had that sort of confidence in myself. I was a real worrier. great stress head, huge anxiety, prone to little anxiety, attacks, just a real worry wart. And I was a real mess, actually. That's growth, isn't it? That's growth. I was asked to do the music for a women's retreat. These women, lady friends of mine, who are very, very good friends of mine, who I've known for probably 20 years, they started doing retreats. It actually wasn't women, it was open to anyone, but it was mostly women who attended. And it was just all about self-growth, finding your authenticity, letting go of limiting beliefs. And all these things I learned, like I never knew what a limiting belief was. I didn't even know that language existed. Like I didn't know that I had said to myself for so long, oh, nobody likes my music, and that was a limiting belief, and that I could retrain myself to say, actually, my music's very meaningful to a lot of people. There's a place for my music. People love my music. And, I think my brain, and I think a lot of artists will understand this because a lot of artists do the same. My brain, if left alone, can go negative very quickly. Has a tendency to go negative, like, oh, you'll never sell enough tickets. Oh, people will never come to the show. Oh, the sound equipment's going to fail. I tell myself all these things, Sophie. Never did any of those things ever happen. My shows would sell out. I always had great sound. It was always wonderful, but my brain would keep on telling me, oh, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. So I was asked to do the music, and I went there as a songwriter to perform and entertain at the end of the night over dinner. And in return, they would let me attend the retreats all weekend. Well, I soon realised that I was a mess, and that I was there was a good reason they'd asked me to come and do the music, because I needed a lot of therapy and just to be around women in a safe place. That was the first time I'd learned about being vulnerable.
Right.
And we did all these exercises where you had to throw your hat in the ring, and you had to stand in the middle in front of all these women, and you had to tell them something that you'd never told anyone before, something that you'd carried all these years that you thought you were ashamed of, or anything. Like, it was just letting it go, releasing it, moving forward, and realizing that by doing that, you're actually helping other women, because other women were going, oh my God, I'm not the only one who thinks I'm a freak. I thought I was a freak. I really thought it was me that, all women feel like this. I hear about imposter syndrome. I just thought that I was trying to fake it all the time. Fake it. Now I know there's a name for that, imposter syndrome. And it's that little voice in your head. You just have to switch it off and say, oh, shut up, go away. I'm not a stuff. I'm an artist. I am. That is who I've been since I was 16 years old, when I started writing songs. So I started singing them my songs, being vulnerable, and singing them the songs that I had written to myself and never thought I'd share with anyone. There were songs there that were too raw. There were songs that didn't go on the album, Sophie, that were too painful and too raw. Well, I just let them all out. And once I did that, they started going, Jo, these are your best songs. These are the songs that we love. And I'm like, yeah, but they're so depressing and they're horrible. They're like, but we connect with them, and they make us feel something, and we love these songs. Anyway, Special was one of those songs.
Okay, right.
Now, I'd never played Special to anyone. And these friends of mine said, Jo, you have to record Special. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. And it took me a while to be able to see it for what it was, a moment in time. It's not my life. It's a moment in time. And, so many people love that song. And if it wasn't for their encouragement, teaching me to be vulnerable, teaching me to find my authenticity and to put that into my music, that the album wouldn't be what it was. And interesting enough, because I know you've listened to the album, those two women are my friends, the lesbians.
All right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So then that all came out in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And they're like, you got to record that song. And I'm like, are you sure? They're like,
well, there you go. Art feeding art, I think, is the way that goes. But I'm interested in you saying that there were songs you played at that retreat that were too raw and they didn't go on the album. So, I mean, and I can understand why you might think some things are just to be kept for you, but is there part of you that thinks at a certain point maybe they should be released to the world?
I think they'll get out there one day.
Yeah.
I think they'll get out there one day, Sophie, but, you know, for the best interests of, you know, people that may be hurt by knowing, you know, like I have got an amazing husband. He is, you know, obviously that's why I'm with him, because he's amazing. But our road is probably similar to most other couples. It's been up and down and it's been rocky, you know, and you don't, I mean, there's really no perfect, is it? And so many marriages don't last these days because people just go, oh, it's too hard. It's just, I can't do it. I could never leave my marriage. I'm a very loyal person by nature, and I could never leave my children. I just am so, loyalty and keeping a family together was just important to me. I was from a broken family. I had a lot of trauma in my life as a child, and I just wanted to keep my family together. But there was a lot of trouble earlier on in our marriage. We both drank a lot, and I don't drink anymore, but my husband's still quite a heavy drinker. But in the early days, it was a lot of alcohol. And you can just imagine, you know, you put that in any relationship and there's always going to be some good fires to put out.
Yeah.
And some terrible songs that get written to express, you know, things that happen around alcohol. But again, I've lived it. I actually lived with an alcoholic mother. So my mum was, and then I married a guy that drank a lot. So whatever reason that was, again, I had to trust the journey. And, you know, there were some very tough years, but I probably wouldn't be the health nut that I am now had it not been through living with all of that. Like, it's probably inspired me most to go on my journey. Another thing I'm passionate about outside music is I'm a real foodie, but I'm a plant-based foodie, and I'm a real health nut. And I really, you know, I would say I don't drink, but lately, you know, I might have a little drink for a celebration or something. But, you know, and had that not all been in my life, I probably wouldn't have gotten to where I am now. So you just, yeah, sometimes you have to trust the journey.
Mm-hmm. But I also think part of what you're talking about being a health nut is tied up with the spiritual practice of creativity, which is your body and mind being the one organism, for lack of a better term, which is not a concept that in Western Cartesian thought is easy to grapple with, because we're so trained to think that the brain is separate, the intellect is separate to the body. But in taking care of the vessel, you are also taking care of the creativity, I think.
I don't, as a songwriter, as an artist, as a creative, and as an empath, I don't think I'd survive in today's world if I didn't have my practice. And it's something that I'm actually so passionate about. Maybe down the track, it's something that I could share with other artists and other young people. Maybe there'd be a little segment for me at Academy to go and chat to young people, to say, you know, if you're going to be a muso and you're going to live your life on the road and you're traveling all the time and you want to be your best all the time, you have to fuel the vessel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, like when we're young and we don't realize this yet, there's so much alcohol around, you know, performance and performers. And, you know, you go to a gig and there's your rider and what do you want? And everyone's drinking. But there's nobody who performs their best when they're drunk.
Absolutely.
You might think you do, You might think, oh, that was a great show. But the next day when you watch the video back and you're like, oh my God, how embarrassing. I never would have said that if I was, oh my God. And I'm thinking I sound really good, but I'm singing too loud. I'm shouting. I'm pitchy. Oh my God. There's no way you perform your best when you're drinking. If you want to perform your best all the time, you just have to be your best. Mind, body, spirit. It's all three. And like in my life, I've learned, you know, you have to put good fuel in the body, no junk, processed stuff that we're not designed to eat. You have to move every day. You have to exercise every day, whether it's like for me, I do yoga every day. I'm not a real gym junkie, but I'll go for a walk or I'll do my yoga. And you have to meditate every day, even if it's only 10 minutes, but just to, you know, because if you don't in this world, more and more every day, and your stress levels just go up and up and up and up. And if you never control that, and if you never ground, if you never meditate, what's at the top? Yeah. A great mental breakdown. I can't do this anymore. And you see it happening all the time. I can't handle this. I can't do this. Like, it's just too much. Even, you know, at academy, you see the kids, I say kids, but they're all, you know, 18, 19, 20, and they go hard and they're late every night and they're drinking and partying, which I was definitely doing at their age. So I'm not putting anything, I'm not saying anything bad about them. It's exactly me. But, you know, get to the last week of academy and they're all in tears.
Right.
Because they're just all burnout, you know. And there is that room for people to learn just how to keep yourself going, you know, if you want to be a successful artist, I think it starts with being present, being sober, and being well. You'll write better songs, you'll perform better, your energy levels go up, you'll be able to do more, and you will achieve greater success.
Yeah, because it is about the work in the end, and you know, because you want to put out your best creative work, and all those practices you're talking about clear out the dross, essentially, whether it's so much imagery that our brains are getting, and that's where meditation can help, whether it's just, yes, feeling the best so that you can perform the best or write the best. But I think it's also, you know, what I detect on your album is this through line, and I did suspect you had a spiritual practice, because what I was hearing was this sort of, not even a through line, but just this layer of something that was in there. And I thought Jo has trusted herself to come to the right place, not just with the individual songs, but the way the songs are assembled on the album. And that is only something you can do when you are practiced at clearing out all the muck that can actually be in your way to get to the work that you want to do.
Well, thank you. That is a great compliment, and probably the greatest compliment I've had. So thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot, Sophie. Yeah, it's been quite a process getting there, and I've had to work really hard to get there. So thank you. Thanks for noticing.
You're very welcome. And it's just that it's part of what's the, I don't want to say the woo-woo part of creativity or whatever, but it's just in listening to music, I guess, because music can operate on so many levels. It's, for me as a listener, it's thinking, as just detecting there's something going on there. Sometimes I can't quite name it, but I certainly heard it, because at a certain point of listening to your album, when I'm first listening to an album, it's like, all right, well, let's listen to the songs and then think of, yeah, what are the lyrics, what's going on? But then listening to the songs collectively, is that, all right, there's intention here, but it's not an overworked intention. So it's not like, oh, let's shoehorn a theme in here and have all these songs along the same line, because the songs are not all about the same thing on your album. They're about components of a life. But again, that was not necessarily just the theme. It was like, oh, it's not, oh, let's put together parts of a life. There was something else going on, which I think for me was this bigger groundswell of what is the meaning of all of this. You know, what gives meaning to my life? What can I share with you as the audience that might give meaning to yours? Yeah. And that is again hard to articulate. I don't think I'm exactly articulating it, but there was just that feeling of listening to it that, like, this is a really big connection that you are willing to make with an audience.
Yeah, well, thank you. I did have I did have a lot of songs to choose from to go on the album, and it was hard to choose. Yeah, I didn't really ever set out to, like you said, do a theme or anything like that. It was just like, right, the ethos of the album came about really when I wrote the last song just before I got to the studio, which was an accidental song called High on Heartstrings. That was the last song that I wrote. It wasn't even in pre-production or anything. It just kind of fell out of the sky before I got there. And I sort of thought, that's the ethos of the entire album. I want people to go on the journey that I've gone on. I want people to learn to love themselves and listen to their heart and trust themselves and back themselves and do what they love in life. Because I spent so many of all my years up until I was 40, I spent them people pleasing and pleasing other people. And all it ever really made me, I always felt like a good girl, like a good daughter and a good wife and a good mother. But it didn't light my fire, and it didn't feed my soul, writing those songs was probably my biggest achievement, because I had my say. And a lot of the time outside of my music, I'm not allowed to have my say.
Right.
As a woman.
Yeah.
In life. Ask a lot of women. From the first job I had when I did journalism, and I went to the ABC, and that was a long time ago. That would have been, probably nearly 30 years ago. But they said, you're a woman, you're pretty, you've got blonde hair, no one's going to take you seriously. No one's going to listen to you.
Right.
You're going to have to work 50 times harder than any male to be taken seriously. That's what we were taught. We were taught that it was a man's world, and to take us seriously, and there was a lot of themes of that in my life, in the industries that I worked in, and being in real estate. I did real estate for years, and, and even in hospitality, men, women can really be, there's a lot that I put up with that women these days wouldn't put up with. Put it that way.
Yeah.
There's a lot that I put up with that women in today's world just would go, not on. So it's good. It's good that things have changed. But even in my family situation, in a family of kind of men of older beliefs, the cattle farmers and the mechanics and the men of my life, they have old beliefs, and sometimes it's been hard for me to have a say. But let me write a song, and I'm going to tell you how it is. So that's been very liberating for me. So there was no theme as to what songs would make the cut. The songs that made the cut were songs that I felt would be as significant and as important today as they will be in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years or 40 years. I wanted every song to have a good message. Yeah.
It's interesting what you're saying about being able to say things in song that you couldn't say in life, because good girl syndrome could have actually limited you as a songwriter as well. They could have made you censor yourself quite a bit.
And it did. And it did for my last few albums.
Right.
It really did. I was the good girl syndrome, so I wanted to write the nice song for my dad, a nice song for my mum, a nice song for my husband, a nice song for my children. I was always pleasing, trying to be that good person. But there's been some very tricky times in my life, and if we don't talk about these times, then people feel alone and lonely, and they struggle because they don't know that it's normal, that the tough times are normal.
Yeah.
That's life. bumps, you know, they go up and down, and I'm going to write songs about the good times, I'm going to write songs about the bad times, and everything in between.
And part of the beauty of the work you do is that it can help people through their own tough times. And I'm sure, I'm wondering actually if there are particular songs you've had feedback on either through social media or when you perform them live that like the same songs over and over again that people come up and say, I really needed that, or that was just for me.
Yeah, there's yeah, definitely. High on Heartstrings has hit a nerve with a lot of women, and a lot of women in my age group have just loved that and said, thank you, I've just got that on repeat. That song means so much to me, because we're all trying to, you know, find ourselves after going through the rearing of children. In that time, you know, we lose ourselves. Women lose themselves in those good 10, 15 years. You kind of give everything up for the kids. A lot of us do anyway. So I found that's resonated with, you know, a lot of mothers. A lot of people love Houseless, Never Homeless. And that's just really me telling my grandmother's story. But it's resonated with a lot of people, just that lonesome feeling of, you know, you may not have a house, but with, even if it's not family, even if it's friends, you've always got a home, you know, that feeling of being connected and being loved. That's so important in everybody's life. So that's resonated. And so yeah, Special is a special song for me, and it's hit a nerve with a lot of men and women. I think women realizing that they need to stand up for themselves and say, hey, I'm special, you know, which is something I couldn't even say for many years, you know, having such low self-worth. I couldn't even say, hey, I'm special, I'm worthy, I should be loved. Like, that just didn't even exist in my old world. So that's hit a nerve with a lot of women and men. And men have said, you know, I listened to that song and I thought, am I treating my wife well enough? Am I treating my daughter well enough? Am I letting them know that they're special and that I love them? I could probably do that better. Right. So that was really nice. And of course, I get a lot of feedback on my friend, the lesbian song. Right. Because everyone seems to know someone who's got that story.
Yeah, right.
Everyone seems to know someone who, you know, was married with children and just went, oh, this is not me.
Right.
It's and I think that, you know, the radio stations have been very supportive of that and playing that song as well. And I think it's because you know, we're just working hard to release that sort of stigma and accept people for who they are, and that love is love. So I think that's a really important message. And I haven't released it as a single yet, so I think a lot of people are still to hear this song. But I did get a beautiful message from a lady who was at a show the other day who I'd sung The Stolen Generation. And she just said, thank you, that was beautiful. My grandmother was a stolen child, and, you know, we've all got trauma and we've all got a story to tell, and, you know, thank you for writing that song. So yeah, I do. I think there's a lot of songs in there that people connect with.
I'm sure there are, because you set it up so they can, and also so that they can connect with you back to tell you what's going on.
Yeah, and, you know, and who hasn't raised a teenager and wanted to go to the boozer?
Well, like, I was actually about to say, I'm surprised more people haven't spoken to you about that song, because that's really
everyone has spoken to me about that song. Everybody loves that song. They're like, yeah, that's a fun song. I do like to make fun songs. I've probably only got really that one song on the album that's a bit cheeky and fun. I usually put a few more than that, but yeah, my last album has a lot of cheeky and fun songs. I like that aspect. I've been greatly inspired by John Prine. I love his writing. So yeah, if you listen to Baby Don't You Love Me No More from my last album, that's a very cheeky song.
Well, Jo, I could probably keep you talking for hours, but I am very sure you have other things to do. And I would love people to go and now listen to your album if they haven't heard it already. So they can enjoy it as much as I have loved it. So the album is High on Heartstrings, Jo Caseley. What a pleasure it has been to talk to you.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much. I've absolutely enjoyed speaking with you, and can't wait to meet you, maybe in Tamworth.
Maybe, yes. I'll see you there. Okay.
Thank you.